Yo, what is up, guys? This is Rise, and welcome to a special video where I'm going to be taking you through my Silph World Championships run for 2022. If you're unaware of Silph, it's a Show 6 Pick 3 format with all sorts of custom metas throughout the year. People grind all season to try and improve their rank. I was fortunate to finish the season at number 2 globally ranked, number 1 in the US, which got me a spot in the World Prelims, in which I finished second place. And that got me a spot in the top 8, the World Championships, which I competed in live on Saturday. All week, we participated in a draft format. It was me, Maxie, Vani from Spain, Vroom Vroom from India, Ryblit from the West Coast here in the United States, Jay's fan from Canada, Zappa from Argentina, and who am I missing? I'm missing somebody, I think. But without further ado, we're going to get into the recap, and we're going to scroll back to this stream and go over the draft just briefly. I was missing Inner Bloom from Australia who qualified, and all week you'll see these casters, some legends, PvP Steve, King, Enhoff, going over our draft. I've got the stream muted, so it's just going to be my voice, but you see the teams, you see the ban rounds. We started with a ban round. And then the draft selections were picked by phases. So for phase 1, those were rounds 1 and 2. We were only allowed to pick certain typings. And that's why you see certain things not being picked or being picked in these early rounds. That's how things like Lickitung and Swampert were then not picked until the later rounds, like round 3 and round 4, because that's when you could pick ground Pokemon, I believe. So you'll see my team down here of... I banned Medicham first round. I picked Shadow Machamp as my first pick. I figured once Medicham's out of the way, it's like one of its biggest counters. We've got Dragalge, which is generally a very good safe swap. I paired it with Swampert, which honestly was mostly just because Swampert was still available. And Dragalge is a very hard answer to grass. Swampert is only weak to grass. I was then very weak to flyers, right? I was very weak to flyers. So I got a Celio with my next pick. Apologies. Which allowed me to cover that like Noctowl weakness a little bit. I then realized I was very weak to confusion. So with my next pick, I picked Hisuian Qwilfish, who is a dark poison who can help cover those psychic types. And then I really wanted a steel type on my team, and I thought an electric type might be good as well. And I was looking at some of my opponents, for example, like Ryblit's team, right? Like Beedrill, Jellicent, Lapras, like very weak to electric. Or for example, let's just take a random team, Inner Bloom, like Drapion, Frostlass, Mantine, Alolan Sandslash, like pretty dang weak to Togedamaru. So I felt like Togedamaru with my 6th pick was a bit of a spice pick, and also something that would really break apart some teams. It'd be difficult to deal with. So, not only did I pick Togedamaru, but I drove an hour to Madison, Wisconsin to trade with some locals to acquire myself a Togedamaru for this tournament. And I ended up getting a pretty good IV one. So, after the draft, we got our pairings, and I was paired against Maxie first round. And a lot of us were joking in this tournament that Maxie had the strongest team. Because if you look at his team, right, it's like almost like an open Great League team with Tapu Fini, Venusaur, Sableye, Talonflame, Cresselia, Heracross. It's basically an open Great League team, except Heracross is kind of like plugged in there rather than your typical fighter. So we were all kind of like jealous of Max's team. However, my team actually matches up pretty well against his team. So like if you took these two teams in a vacuum, you might say Maxie's is better. But personally, I feel like I had quite a big team comp advantage. And the main reason was because my Qwilfish has virtually no hard counters. So my Qwilfish, it beats the Tapu Fini, it beats the Venusaur, it beats the Talonflame, like except for like the Zero Shield maybe. It beats Cress. It's pretty neutral against Heracross. And then Sableye is kind of like bait dependent. But on paper and like the one shield when you successfully bait, my Qwilfish beats the whole team. So it's just super safe. Dragalge as well is quite safe. It really only has to worry about the Tapu Fini, which pretty much hard walls it. But my Togedamaru is also very dangerous for the whole team. The only thing that really counters it is the Heracross, and a Wild Charge from a Togedamaru is pretty much going to one-shot a Heracross as well. So I felt like I had quite a big team composition advantage. And I actually did export my own battles for this, but I think it'll be more convenient to just show you guys how they played out on stream. And you can focus on the side of my battles so it's not confusing. If you try and watch both sides, it might be a little bit confusing because there's a bit of a desync. But I think if you just focus on my point of view, things will be a little bit easier to follow. So let's get into this. Like I told you, from my preparation, Qwilfish, Togedamaru, and Dragalge just seemed like my flat-out strongest three. They all have play against pretty much everything. And if I was to, like, bring a Machamp, right? Like, what is my Machamp even trying to catch against Maxie's team? Like, Talonflame? Sableye? Like, what is my Machamp even good against? Swampert, same thing. Like, I'd basically be trying to line it up with the Talonflame. Everything else is either, like, bad or neutral. So I decided I was going to stick with these same three every game. Qwilfish, Dragalge, and Togedamaru. And by the way, this really threw off some of the casters. Qwilfish normally has a, it currently has a glitch where it's not moving. So you see our Qwilfish just frozen in time, and the casters had a lot of fun with that, and it kind of threw them off. Maxie goes straight for the close combat, and then dips out. And the one concern I had against Maxie's team was this Sableye safe swap, because even though my Qwilfish is really safe, his Sableye is also really safe, right? Because I don't really have a solid Sableye answer. I'm going to drag my camera up here. And you'll see here, I am actually willing to take the return because my strategy here was I wanted the Togedamaru to sweep here in the endgame. So I was willing to just sacrifice my Qwilfish, and this way my Togedamaru, I'm calling that there's probably a Cresselia in back, or maybe even a Tapu Fini. That'd be even better. I kind of have to shield at this point. A foul play would hurt Togedamaru quite a bit. And then here I make a critical error. This is just inexperience. My first time using Togedamaru. I didn't think Fell Stinger would be enough. So I debuffed myself with Wild Charge, which was completely unnecessary. I checked after this match how much a Fell Stinger would do. And it would do, I think, 11% to a Sableye. So, yeah, Fell Stinger would have been enough. And it actually would have allowed 2 Wild Charges to KO this Cresselia. But because I just made a very poor misplay there, I lose that game. I think if I had simply just Fell Stingered the Sableye, it KOs, and I'm able to flip that match. So already, right out of the gate, we're down 1-0 against a team that I felt really strong against. So we're going to try and pull it back here in game number 2. And this time we catch the Heracross where we want to see it. And in scrims, this was the one thing I knew I had to be prepared for, was the Sableye safe swap. And I just have to put myself in a scenario where I'm not either like down a shield or lose switch. So I decide to actually shield and go for the outrage, because this way I guarantee the shield or I guarantee switch. And I'm getting ready for him to probably come in with a Cresselia. So I'm safe swapping my Qwilfish, frozen in time. And already I feel like I'm in a pretty decent spot because I still have my Dragalge saved for the Heracross. And Qwilfish should be pretty solid here. Shadow Ball, I felt like was the way to go for my moveset for this tournament. Just because it's going to cover the most things, right? You're going to hit most things for neutral damage or super effective between Aqua Tail and Shadow Ball coverage. I decide to let it go. I'm going to wait out my full switch timer. Maxie counters with the Heracross, but the nice thing here for me, right, is I can Wild Charge, and then I can get out of here. And now I've got my Dragalge here, and then this becomes actually pretty scary, because if he Rock Blasts me and lands it, he can simply just shield. Oh no, he actually doesn't have a shield. But I was concerned if he Rock Blasts me, I don't know if I would take out the Heracross in time to the point where it does considerable damage to my Togedamaru. I have to commit here to the outrage, and Dragalge gets to the outrage here, which is going to knock out the Cresselia. So a very close game too. Maybe I would have been better off not shielding the Dragalge and just saving the shield for Togedamaru. I'm not sure, but it worked out in the end. A shout out to Alfindiol for the raid of 65. We're doing a recap of our Silph run from this past weekend, and we just tied it up against Maxie 1-1 here. And we are going to skip around to game number 3, and it's the decisive game 3. It's the same lead. It's the same safe swap. These were our best threes against each other, right? Like, you could argue he should bring Tapu Fini for my Dragalge. However, the other two things I'm bringing are really tough for Tapu Fini. So what I decided to do here is I know I can live a foul play. I'm actually going to just sacrifice my Dragalge here and try and go for a Thunder Shock down on the Sableye. I could have even considered like poison jabbing down and shielding a return, but I didn't want to take the chance of like getting baited. So I go for a Thunder Shock down here. And Maxie ends up giving up switch, and he goes into his Cresselia. And to be honest, I don't know if this is the right play, because now I can simply just stay in and unleash all this energy. And he actually CMP ties me here on the Wild Charge, which makes my job a little bit easier, because now I can simply just let this Togedamaru go. And now I'm going to get a Poison Jab down on the Cresselia and have energy loaded for this Heracross. And I already at this point am feeling pretty confident. I know the only way I lose this is if he manages to make a successful catch. So I'm going to go for the Aqua Tail bait here. It's like a pretty safe bait, right? You almost have to shield. And then he tries to catch. I didn't throw instantly. He just had to make a tough call that I was going to throw instantly. And then Shadow Ball will knock out the Heracross, which will put us into the next round. Shout out to Maxie. Really nice guy I got to meet in London. He's from the UK. A fantastic battler. He said how like he started off as just a random chatter in Tho Technical's chat and ended up becoming like his teammate on the EU Emperors, arguably the best faction in the world. So pretty cool story there from Maxie. And we're going to skip on to my next battle, which was against Zappa from Argentina here. And the casters, when they were breaking this down, said it was going to be the Battle of the Mud Boys, which I kind of agree with. My Swampert, in my opinion, was my safest Pokemon. It beats Skarmory. Whiscash, is kind of neutral. Beats AWAC, beats Dedenne. And even in its bad matchups against Dugong and Dragonair, Swampert still has that Earthquake to threaten them. My Machamp as well looked really strong. Beats Dugong, beats Whiscash usually. Can beat Dragonair, at least in the one shield scenario. And once again, even if in its bad matchups, like Marowak or Skarmory, it's going to dish out for Marowak that threatening Rock Slide. For Skarmory, the counters still hit for neutral, so Machamp can actually beat Skarmory in the one shield. So yeah, Swampert, Machamp were kind of my go-to here. And then Celio is a really nice Dugong counter, since you can spam off Body Slams and you're taking no damage. It's not really threatened by the Blizzard for Whiscash, so I consider Whiscash a potential good matchup for Celio. And then it's just bulk and its spamminess against Skarmory, I think, consider it to be a good matchup against Skarmory as well. Kind of like the Lickitung matchup against Skarmory, right? Even though Lickiting's only dealing out like resisted body slams, we know that Lickitung can still beat Skarmory. So kind of a similar scenario there with Celio. And then, of course, Dragonair, Ice First Dragon is good. So Swampert, Celio, Machamp felt like my strongest three. And here we go into game one. We lead Swampert into Dragonair. Not where I want to see it. This time, my point of view is going to be on the left-hand side of your screen. And this team, when I built this, when I locked in this team, it was kind of like double weak to AWAC in the back because I'm running Aurora Beam on Celio and my AWAC answer in the lead. So if this was pretty much anything, I'm literally going to swap in my Machamp. Except maybe like a Skarmory or if I caught the AWAC. Like, I wanted to swap my Machamp. So even though that's a bad lead, like, this game is already going to plan for me. Because once the AWAC is out of the picture, there is no legitimate Celio answer on my opponent's team. So I'm able to grab the shield with the Cross Chop bait. I mean, they kind of have to shield, right? I'm able to call the Bone Club. And by the way, shout out to one of my new teammates, Elam, who we played out this matchup a few times, except it was role reversal. He had the Primeape and I had the Marowak in the ADL finals last season, and the ape just made my life as the AWAC so difficult. So I tried to like kind of make it the same with me being the Machamp this time around. And my opponent tries to catch a Body Slam on their Skarmory, but I was patient. I knew a catch was likely. And at this point, we have 2 shields up for our Celio. So this is looking pretty good for us. This is a shiny rank 4 Celio, I think. So we are just going to keep tapping away, get a big Powder Snow down here. We're up a shield. I knew that the Dragonair had about a Body Slam loaded, but I was fairly confident that I could get off my Aurora Beam here before they got to double Body Slam. You know, I'm usually pretty good at counting energy when I'm playing like GBL or whatnot, but Mr. Tho Technical in chat, I'm sure he can relate. Well, sometimes when you're in these high-pressure situations, sometimes you lose track of energy or you're not super on point as one might normally be. And we take game 1 there against Zappa, who was the LATAM Continental Champion. And I think my thought process at this point was I liked the team I locked in. I was surprised he didn't bring the AWAC. Oh, wait. No, I'm tripping. He did bring the AWAC in the back. So this point, I was trying to go ABA strong to AWAC, because I figured he might, like, keep the AWAC in the back again, since my back line was so weak to AWAC. Uh-oh. That's a misclick. Let's see. Getting back to where we were. That was game 3. So, yeah, my thought process was I wanted to go ABA strong to AWAC. And look at this. You can see from Zappa's perspective, he did not bring the AWAC this time. So we're going to play this out. Swampert, a neutral matchup against Mr. Whiscash. I look so different in my Silph profile pic. I literally took the selfie like 2 days ago. So, well, that's a lie. A week ago. 2 days before the Silph tournament. My opponent is able to catch a Hydro Cannon on their Dragalge. And I was confident here I could live the Body Slam. I didn't know if I could Dragon Tail down here, but after I saw the damage it did, I do commit to the Dragon Tail down. I come out with a move. Just kind of a blind Aqua Tail here to make sure I get off some damage. And this is a little bit sketchy now, right? Because the Skarmory has 2 shields, and our Swampert is starting to approach Sky Attack range. Our Machamp obviously cannot really afford to take a Sky Attack, so I'm not really sure what to do here exactly. I feel like I kind of have to take this. Otherwise, my Machamp is going to be shieldless. And the Whiscash has loaded energy. So I'm just hoping I could, like, somehow... I don't know what to do at this point. I know that the Whiscash has a Blizzard loaded. My opponent makes the smart play and combos immediately with the Blizzard. I thought about throwing the blind cross chop here, but I wasn't sure if it would KO a Whiscash from that range. I think a Whiscash would barely survive from there. Let me know what you guys think in the chat. So I had kind of conceded at that point, even though I probably should have blind thrown my cross chop for the off chance that it would KO the Whiscash. So we are tied 1-1 going into a decisive game 3 here. Winner goes on to the winner's finals. Loser goes to the loser's bracket. And I was like, okay, well, my Dragalge didn't really have anywhere to go in that previous game. So maybe for a decisive game 3, it's just better to stick to my safest line. And I end up going, my opponent didn't bring the AWAC. So I'm like, okay, maybe we like somehow scared off the AWAC. So I go with a line that's ABA weak to AWAC, kind of risky. But I know my Celio is quite safe. So it has play against pretty much everything other than Alolan Marowak. And then my Swampert as well is really strong. So if you look at our 3 here, this is a like very neutral trio against each other. So I decided to go straight for the Aurora Beam. I figured he might not want to like commit a shield this early in the game. And if he does commit shields early, that's going to be pretty good for my Machamp in the back. This was just a 50-50 call, man. I shielded the last second. And luckily, I made the right call this time. It was the Brave Bird. So that's pretty massive for me. He swaps in Whiscash. And at this point, my concern is like, okay, what if there is an AWAC in the back? I don't really want to swap in my Swampert. So I figure like my best play at this stage might just be staying in with Celio, getting off all this energy, and then going from there afterwards. So gonna get off another body slam here, which is pretty massive. I tried to snipe with my Machamp, but Zappa was super quick to react. Actually kept his Whiscash alive. And he responds with the Dragonair. So this becomes a little bit tricky, right? Because I know if I leave my Swampert shieldless, it's going to get Brave Birded. But I feel like I kind of have to shield. Otherwise, this Dragonair is going to be too difficult to take out. So I deliver the Cross Chop. I knock out the Dragonair. In comes Skarmory. And at this point, I'm like, I don't want to fail the catch and give him extra farm. So I decided like not to go for the catch here. This would have been pretty nasty had I made that catch. Hindsight's 2020. I get hit by the Brave Bird. Swampert hangs on. I know he's about to catch. So I mudshot down, and now I'm just praying. I'm just praying that I live that air slash that went through. I have double Hydro Cannon. Do I live the air slash? I do. And I get off the Hydro Cannon with a sliver of health and knock out the Skarmory. And hopefully Miss Mystic didn't record my voice when in the voice chat I was in, because I like yelled. I yelled a not good word in celebration after I won that match, because I did not know. I didn't know if my Skarmory, or sorry, if my Swampert would live the air slash from the Skarmory, and I didn't know if my Celio's Powder Snow would KO before like an air slash would. So I was very excited, which goes us into the winners finals against Ryblit. So you see the bottom half of the bracket. Actually, no, they don't show it here. But lots of games play out on the bottom side of the bracket. And maybe they'll show it eventually, but our next opponent would end up being Ryblit. So this is essentially like the top 4. And PvPoke says 33.7%, Birdmaster says. That's good to know. So it would have been awfully close. Would have been awfully close. So we're here in the top 4, essentially, against Ryblit. And he has a unique team with the Pachirisu and the Victini. I was expecting double water from him. I was expecting double water with Lapras and Jelly. And my Celio felt too risky to bring, right? Like, my Celio is probably pretty good against, like, Lapras, but not great. So I didn't really want to bring my Celio. My Qwilfish, once again, looked really good. Qwilfish has play against everything, and because I was expecting the Jellicent to come, Qwilfish is arguably my best answer to the Jellicent. So we're just going to hop straight into game number 1 here. And my perspective is on the right-hand side for you guys. We lead Swampert into Scrafty, and I actually thought about this scenario as I locked this team in. So I'm running Swampert, Qwilgod, and Togedamaru. And Togedamaru, if we just backtrack real quick, if you look at his team, Togedamaru is only like weak to Scrafty. That's the only thing it wants to avoid. Everything else it has play against. So my strat was simply like let Swampert go, get shield advantage, and try and sweep with Togedamaru or Qwilfish in back, since both Qwilfish and Togedamaru are quite good against Ryblit's team. And ironically, those are my last 2 picks of the draft, and they've been like the best 2 Mons in 2 of my matches so far. I go for a Hydro Cannon here. I know I didn't even build to the Earthquake, but I wanted to get this off before he had the potential to like land a foul play. I decide I'm going to let this foul play go because I know I can still get off another Hydro Cannon here. Going to get off the Hydro Cannon. Ryblit deciding whether he wants the shield or not. He's going to use the shield, and he's going to counter me down. So I'm going to come in with Qwilfish here. The good thing about Qwilfish is it's going to resist all of Scrafty's charge moves. Once again, our Qwilfish has the glitch. It's a Quill glitch. So it is frozen. I was concerned with a Shadow Ball here and figured I'd shield the first one. But it ends up being an Ice Beam, so which tells me he's probably running double nuke. And then I'm going to go for my own Shadow Ball. Bang. Knock it out. And I was honestly expecting there to be a Lapras in back, but no, it's actually the Victini, and it's running Confusion. So this becomes a little tricky. And what I end up deciding to do is I sacrifice my full health Togedamaru on the catch, and I put it all on the back of the Qwilgod. I know this is just a pup, but I don't want fast moves to come into play. So I'm going to shield the pup. I'm going to throw my Aqua Tail right away before he can do this boosted counter damage. He lets it go, and at this point, I'm just going to commit to fast moves to not like miss time and give him free energy. So that is a GG in game number 1. Yes, we despise we despise the Jellymeister, right? In this chat, we despise the Jellymeister. Shout out to K-God. So we get a nice win there in game number 1. And knowing double nuke on Jelly is really helpful. It means I'm not going to get baited by a Bubble Beam. As we look to go forward here. And yeah, at that point in the battle, right, I had realized, like, my Togedamaru was almost a liability at that point. Either it's going to get lined up against the Scrafty, where the counters are going to be super threatening, or it's going to get hit by a V-Create. Whereas my Qwilfish had play against that back line. So I just sacked the Togedamaru and went with it here. I'm going to safe swap my Qwilfish, and I'm met by the Scrafty here in game number 2. You know what's funny is I think my Dragalge actually wins certain scenarios against Victini, so I could have theoretically stayed in. But this is kind of nice to save the Dragalge, and also to lure out the Scrafty so Togedamaru avoids it. Because once again, and I actually undercharge here, and the reason I undercharge is because I know I CMP tie on this power-up punch, so this will give a little bit more farm to the Dragalge. And you'll see I actually don't do a poison jab there, which will give me 3 Dragon Tails here. I am going to have to eat a pup, so ask yourself, is it worth it? You have to eat a boosted pup in exchange for some extra energy. Quill is paralyzed. Quill is glitched out right now. And this ends up becoming quite awkward. I throw the Outrage here, which is going to bring up the first Protect Shield from Ryblit. And now I'm thinking like, if I let this go, like, can Togedamaru do enough to sweep here? And, you know, in hindsight, I think the right play probably was to let go, especially knowing double nuke here. And then obviously I have to shield the V-Create at this point. And then here is where keeping track of energy became... So what am I? Am I 3? I'm 3 Thunder Shocks away from Wild Charge. So I go for a Fell Stinger bait. So let's see. If I had just gone straight for the Wild Charge here, I'm only 3 away. So yeah, I think I get there first. Yeah. So an unnecessary bait by me, a misplay. I don't know. It's one of those situations in your head. You're like, of course, like they have to shield. But then also, I was thinking, well, if he lets it go, can I get off 2 Wild Charges before the next Shadow Ball? So it was kind of tricky there. I don't know if that was necessarily a throw, because I don't know if the Jelly ends up reaching a Shadow Ball before I get off 2 Wild Charges in the end game. So I might have thrown that game with just an unnecessary bait right there. Or maybe the bait was necessary to get enough energy to take out both the Victini and the Jellicent. So like a game that was a little bit complex, even now, after I've already played it out and watched it back, I'm not like 1000% sure. But if you guys took the time to like break down the energy of what everything had, there is a chance maybe if I had simply just Wild Charge there, I win the game. Or maybe if I Wild Charge there and then I bait the Jelly, I win the game. That's also another possibility. So we are tied up 1-1 here against Ryblit. A phenomenal battler, plays for the Wing Attack faction. And here we go, game number 3. And I was expecting a potential Pachirisu, either in the lead or in the back. So I actually doubled up against the Pachirisu in the back. And my thought process here is Swampert lead will hopefully lure out either a Lapras or a Jellicent and really open things up for Dragalge in the back. So we safe swap Swampert. In comes Lapras. Once again, my POV is on the right-hand side. We're going to go for the Earthquake here. And it lands. And this is massive. And I shield here, not necessarily because I was expecting him to go for an Ice Beam, but because I really wanted to secure switch advantage here. So we're throwing with proper timing here after 4 Mud Shots. Hydro Cannon should be enough to KO. And Swampert, just like that, is able to take switch advantage. Now I'm waiting for what's going to come in. He can't really come in with the Victini or the Pachi, right? So he has to come in with the Scrafty. I'm going to get off my Hydro here, and I'm actually going to dip into Qwilfish. And now this puts me in a good spot because I can simply just sacrifice my Qwilfish here, do as much damage as possible. And the reason I was willing to hard swap there was to save the energy for Swampert later and not give Scrafty like a big farm down. So I think I could have done either, right? I could have just thrown my Hydro at the Scrafty, but I think this play made sense as well. Now the Scrafty does have quite a bit of energy. I'd rather let him land a normal foul play than bait me and then land a boosted foul play. So I let the first one go. I'm overfarming here quite a bit. I swap, and he has to throw his move, knowing I'm 1 away. Swampert lives on maybe like 2 or 3 HP. Gets the final shield, and at this point, I know I can safely shield here because even if he baits me, he's not going to reach a foul play since I'm only 1 Dragon Tail away from the Outrage, and the Outrage will be enough to take me to the grand finals of the Silph World Championships. So all 3 matches, right, came down to a a Game 3 against Maxie, against Zappa, against Ryblit. So very tense matches. And that will eventually bring us to the grand finals here against Mr. Vroom Vroom Pow, the captain of the Indian Gym Breakers team. And also, which I think Caleb mentioned on the cast, was Vroom Vroom Pow. We were both in Group 2 of the World's Prelims, and he was the only player to defeat me in Group 2. He swept the entire group. I came in second place to him as we approach the World Championships here. If we look at his team, I felt like we had play on both sides. My two biggest concerns were the Runerigus and the Malamar, because, like, if he swaps Runerigus, like, what do I respond with? I guess either Celio or Swampert, right? The thing is, which some of you guys may not realize, Runerigus just straight up beats Swampert. It just straight up beats Swampert in, like, the one shield scenario. Because if they swap Runerigus and I swap Swampert, he's going to get off 2 Shadow Balls before I get off 3 Hydro Cannons. And Runerigus can tank a Hydro Cannon. So Runerigus swap and Malamar swap are really difficult for me to deal with, because they're just going to spam off threatening moves for my entire team. And then it's like Machamp is like a pretty solid response to the Malamar, because the counters and the cross chops are very oppressive. However, if I counter Malamar with Machamp, then I just get farmed down by the Runerigus, and I've got nothing that does super well against Runerigus. So I knew it was going to be a very difficult matchup. I don't think it's like oh, his team is unbeatable, like there's no chance. But I knew it was going to be difficult, and I knew I'd have to play very well and outplay Vroom Vroom Pow to somehow win this. So we are going to have to go forward a bit into game number 1 of the grand finals. We've got Swampert into Malamar. This is probably one of my better answers to Malamar, considering I don't really have any answer to it. And the same thing with, like, Qwilfish, right? Like, Qwilfish is probably one of my better answers to Malamar. However, Qwilfish has very limited play against the remainder of his team. So it made me feel like it was very RPS. And by the way, I can show you guys a little bit. This might be something. Here's something I could point out that even some, like, really high-level battlers in chat might not be aware of. There's actually still a way you can kind of deny moves. I don't think it's consistent, but if we double up, right? If I double up on Hydro and I CMP time my opponent and I win CMP, I can throw my next Hydro during their charge move and theoretically win CMP. So you actually see that technique demonstrated here. So we CMP tie, right? I throw my Hydro, they throw the superpower. And as he throws his superpower, I throw my next Hydro. And I actually get a denial because of it. Because you see he tries to catch on his Empoleon, but it doesn't let him. So that's a technique I don't know if you guys are aware of, but it works sometimes. And I'm going to let this go through here, take the shield advantage. Because once again, I know this matchup is so dang neutral that I really don't want to go down shields. And Dragalge is pretty safe for me. Dragalge is my safest mon. So I'm staying in here against the Emp. I lose charge move priority here. And the thing was, if I let this go and he shields, suddenly I felt like my Celio... would have too much to overcome. So I end up storing this energy, catching the Drill Peck here in game number 1. And when he stays in, this tells me it's probably either Runerigus or, like, Jump Bluff. So I'm going to throw a Body Slam here to chip away at Empoleon. And then I'm going to go for the Aurora Beam, obviously, here against the Ground Ghost. Bang. He's going to land the Shadow Ball here, and I'm just going to put this all on Dragalge. I could have farmed down there, obviously, but I had double Aqua Tail. And then I just end up doing one extra here just to confirm that the Empoleon was like in Aqua Tail range. And then take him out. So I take game number 1 here in the grand finals. As we fast forward. So yeah, pretty neutral game all around. But because we got that shield advantage in the lead, it allowed our back line to take things down. Game number 2, worst possible lead, Swampert into Jumpluff. So I'm going to safe swap my Dragalge right away. And once again, like, I don't want to commit a shield here, and then he just, like, swaps in Malamar and goes for a massive, like, farm. So that's why I was reluctant to commit my shield there. I go for the Outrage. Seems a little bit too risky to bait. He throws right away, which gives me a sneak. And here, I probably should have gone for Switch Advantage, as you can tell. Probably should have gone for Switch Advantage. I come in Celio. He swaps in to Malamar. And mistake. Big mistake here by me. So he comes in Malamar. I'm ahead energy. And I can simply body slam here and go into Swampert where he's going to be in Hydro Cannon range. And for some reason, I hesitate. And I allow him to get his move off first. Which makes this really weird now. Because now our switch clocks are going to be like super desynced if I switch. So I think that's a pretty bad misplay by me, to be honest. Now he's going to go for the superpower here. I'm going to let it go through. It knocks me out. And then I've got 2 shield Swampert against the world. I feel like I kind of have to shield at this point. Because if I don't shield, I know it's probably a Runerigus. He could just go straight Shadow Claw Sand Tomb. And fast moves would eventually take me out. And unfortunately here, I'm at 100 energy. I kind of have to throw my Hydro Cannon. I like undercharged it quite a bit. But it still KOs. And this is tough because a Hydro Cannon only does like 60-something% to a Runerigus. So Hydro Cannon, if I land it, is not enough. I need 2 of them. So I felt like my only win con at that point would be calling a Sand Tomb bait, which he smartly does not go for. And that's going to be a GG. So what could I have done in game 2? Probably throw my Body Slam, swap the Swampert, and then just save all my shields for Celio. I think that would have been the way I win game 2. Or maybe, honestly, I don't think going for a switch against the Jumpluff does me a whole lot of good. Because then I'm down a shield, and I probably get Psycho Cut down or Shadow Clawed down. So I think, yeah, I think throwing the Body Slam and then swapping Swampert was probably the way I win that game. Game 3, once again, worst possible lead. Qwilfish into Empoleon. We're in a tricky spot here straight away. So we say swap Dragalge. Dropek lands. In comes Malamar. And he correctly shields our Outrage. And this is really tough because now he can do a big overfarm. And with our other 2 Pokemon, right? Like neither of them really wants to take a charge move. So he gets a massive Psycho Cut down. I know that there's almost always going to be a Runerigus, right, in the back, so I come in with Machamp. Lucky for me, he baits here. And honestly, I'm like debating, like, do I just sacrifice my Machamp and put it all on Quill? So it's kind of a difficult scenario. In comes Rune. I bank a Cross Chop, but this is just too tough, man. I feel like this could be my win con, just like somehow he lets this go, because he's playing very very unorthodox, very aggressive with like what he's shielding, what he's not shielding. Very hard to predict, and I just kind of concede at this point. Gets off the move, and like in a GBL game, I would probably just let this go since the game is over, but it's Silph. It's the Silph Grand Finals. I'm just gonna play it out till the end. Maybe scare him that I'm running a payback or something. Just to scare him a little bit. But no payback here. It's funny. In the Aero Draft League, payback has come in handy for me a few times. Certain weeks. But Silph, you have to lock in your moveset at the very start of the tournament. And that's what you're locked in with. So Vroom Vroom Pow takes a 2-1 lead here. And is going to try and force the bracket reset in game number 3. We had a neutral game 1 lead. He picked the best possible lead in game 2 and 3, which kind of left me playing from behind. And here we have game number 4, a neutral lead here. Dragalge into Komodo. It's the first time he's brought the Komodo, I believe. I figure I'll shield here. I'm trying to be cognizant of the fact that he might aggressively swap. He does. And this time I go for the bait. He just shielded an Outrage last game. In this game, he calls the Aqua Tail bait, and that is just such a savage call from him, and immediately puts him in a very commanding position right now. I go for the Hydro Cannon here. He's going to shield to get off his next move. I'm going to let this go. Kind of interesting. I don't really want to come in with Celio here. Yeah, I come in with Dragalge. I thought I lagged a turn there, so that's why I did 2 and throw. He gets out, which is unfortunate. I'm going to reach an Aqua Tail here. He kept the Malamar alive with a superpower, I think. And I'm like, I can't shield this, right? I can't shield this because the Malamar has a superpower, and then you're going to see a really critical misplay here. I allow him to get off the Sand Tomb before I throw. I should have thrown my Aurora Beam right there before he threw. Or just not thrown it at all and just fully committed to a farm down. But instead, I get caught in between. And that is the worst thing you ever want to do, is get caught on the CMP. Either throw it before they get to the move or farm down completely. I get caught in between, and now this becomes a race. But because I am debuffed by the Sand Tomb especially, I'm not going to get... not going to be quite enough here. Ends up coming down to 1 fast move. So Vroom Vroom Pow is able to reset the bracket by taking game number 4. And it is a brand new best of 5. And breaking down that original 5, game 1 I win. Game 2, hard counter lead. Maybe a couple things I could have done differently, but don't think I necessarily played poorly. Game 3, once again, a hard counter lead. Don't know realistically how much I could have done differently in game number 3. Game number 4, mistakes were made. Probably could win game number 4 and force a game 5 if I had played that game 4 better. That was, in my opinion, that was a poorly played end game from me, game 4, and probably should have been a win. But Vroom Vroom just putting on a clinic, winning 3 in a row after dropping the first game. And at this point, I had to take a breather. Similar to Milwaukee, right? Similar to Milwaukee when I dropped 3 in a row against Dunebug. I just had to try and compose myself. And I actually, this is all remote, right? So I go out in the... I went outside. I have a little boxing bag in the garage. And I started, I put my gloves on. And I started hitting the boxing bag and doing some kicks just to, clear my mind. And Vroom Vroom was probably wondering why I was taking so long to lock in for the next set. But that's what I was doing. I went outside. I was hitting the punching bag. Just trying to focus. And I hadn't led the Machamp yet. I was trying to catch anything but the Runerigus. And I catch the Runerigus here in game number 1. Unfortunate lead. I save swap Dragalge. And here... So, right, Vroom had already made some nice catches, some nice reads. I feel like at a high level, no one expects you to throw right away. So that's why I throw my Aqua Tail instantly. But he catches it. So props to him. It's also technically proper timing after the one-turn switch in, so that's why I threw it right away. And he caught it like we're playing a 2150 ELO GBL battle. Just throwing my Aqua Tail right away. And now a Drill Peck comes through. I'm going to shield to get off my move. And I figured, like, at this point, like, he definitely shields. But no, he calls my freaking Aqua Tail again. Oh, my God, dude. So, literally, this game going as worst case scenario. Not only did I get the worst lead possible, but I'm also being outplayed by him making 2 consecutive bait calls. And then Drill Peck coming through. Seal going to eat it. I'm going to overfarm here. I figured my Machamp's dead weight anyway. So maybe if I could somehow just farm up a ton with Celio and output a lot of pressure, I could have a chance. And, you know, when your opponent's already caught 2 moves, it starts to get in your head a little, right? So actually, here was like my last hope, right? Here's my last hope. I shield this. And because he's super powered, I figured he'd dip immediately. So I actually immediately throw my Aurora Beam. Maybe he thinks he caught a body slam. So that was kind of like my last hope. But no, he shields instantly. Doesn't even think about it. And that's going to be game over. I catch a Shadow Ball, but it obviously doesn't really matter at this point. He makes a really nice undercharge as well to give himself some extra farm here. And Celio is within Shadow Ball range. And a very dominant Game 1 victory here from Vroom Vroom Pow. As we go to game number 2. Guys, I even went to the boxing. I even went to go boxing in my garage to clear my head, and it still didn't work. So I'm like, what the heck do I do now? That's 4 in a row that Vroom Vroom has beaten me. And we go to game number 2 here in the reset. Okay, Celio into Rune finally. A pretty solid lead. But you're going to see just how busted Runerigus is here. And also the Empoleon safe swap. Kind of bold, right? Assuming I didn't bring Machamp. But Swampert is like arguably my best answer to this. So I ended up going for the Earthquake here. I know he likes to save shields for Runerigus and for Malamar. So that's why I decided to go for the Earthquake. He makes like maybe his first mistake of the match and lets me get to this Hydro Cannon before taking me out. At this point, I'm going to let this go through. Swampert's done his job. Got all this energy on Celio. He catches my Aurora Beam, like his 67th catch of the match, but it's not like he caught a resisted move. This is still going to chunk the Malamar. I attempt to catch a superpower. He doesn't fall for it. I am going to get off my Aqua Tail here before his next move, and he's going to be forced to let it go through because he doesn't want to be shieldless on his Runerigus. So he's going to go for a move here. I'm going to let it go. I know he has to go for Shadow Ball here to knock me out. And at this point, I figured my lose con could be like him shielding an Aurora Beam. So I just go for Body Slam, not necessarily expecting the shield, but I figured Powder Snows would probably be enough afterwards, but it actually ends up being super duper close. So I shield the Sand Tomb here, nice bait. And Powder Snows takes him out. 1 Shadow Claw before he would have got to the Shadow Ball. So a close finish there. And we even up the series 1-1. One to one after dropping. So I won the original game 1. I lost 4 consecutive games, and we finally get one back. Can this build any sort of momentum? Bang. Jump Bluff, dude. So I just want to point out, the 2 times I've led Swampert, I've led into Jump Bluff. The 2 times I've led Swampert have been the 2 times he's led Jump Bluff. The 2 times I've led Shadow Machamp have been the 2 times he's led Runerigus. And the 1 time I led Qwilfish was the 1 time he led Empoleon. So just making some fantastic lead calls, man. Just fantastic lead calls. Normally, I consider myself like above average at those types of things. I don't necessarily play based on what I think the lead is going to be. I more so just make like team comps that can overcome bad leads. But when it's such a hard lead, it can be difficult. He saves a move on his jump bluff here. I'm going to commit to the outrage. I get it off, which is really nice. Do some valuable damage here. I'm expecting it to be either Runerigus or Malamar in the back. I don't know which one per se. But I know with an Energy Ball loaded on the jump bluff, it's going to be tough here. I don't think I was going to be able to Mud Shot down before the next Hydro. So I decide to swap in Celio to go for a big Powder Snow down here. All shields are still in play. Could have technically Aurora Beamed here. That might have been smart. Because he's not going to want to shield before he debuffs himself. But I decided to go for straight Body Slams. He's still not shielding. Landing that first Aurora Beam might have been pretty nice. Gotta shield something, even though I know it's just going to be a foul play. I get off the move here. And here I'm thinking, okay, my Swampert is healthy enough where a Shadow or a Jump Bluff won't be able to farm it down. So I force him to throw here. I figure I can't really shield because I know Jump Bluff has a move. And then here I lose CMP. And once again, just I don't know if it necessarily matters. I don't know if it necessarily matters here. Because if I don't CMP here, he combo plays. So it comes down to like me making the right call on when he's going to combo play. So I guess CMPing here is a mistake, but it's not necessarily like a throw in my opinion, because even if I don't throw my move here, he has the option to combo play with his jump bluff whenever he wants, and I have to make the right exact call as to when he's going to do so. So kind of a throw, but like not really. It just didn't allow me to play out my win con, I guess. And there's the jump bluff. Vroom Vroom. Going for the acrobatics for a little bit of style points. And he is 1 game away now from taking the World Championship. Let's see if we can force a Game 5. And we've got Dragalge into Malamar. Basically, I hadn't been able to call any leads. So I just decided to lead my safest Pokemon for this last game. Potentially last game. And I go with the Dragalge. Unfortunately, I have to shield a superpower here. And then I get sniped by the Kamo O. So literally, just like worst case scenario, I'm only going to get off 1 move despite having all that energy. And once again, right, he had only brought the Kamo O 1 time before this. So I just was not expecting it, man. I'm expecting a Runerigus, Malamar, and Empoleon, or yeah, so just was not expecting the Kamo O to come in like that. So a very smart play by Vroom Vroom Pow. Gonna go for a cross chop here. In comes Celio and Malamar. Gonna have to respect a superpower here. We've got our low health Machamp in the back. I'm going to go for the body slam. Get the last shield. He shields is just smart to land the superpower here. Going to do considerable damage, even though it won't KO. And in comes Skunk Tank. And at this point, I knew the writing might very well be on the wall. I can't even throw my harder hitting move because I need to delay my switch clock to play out a catch as my only potential win con here. He's just reaching the crunch at this point, so I swap in. He doesn't fall for the catch, and he is going to solidify the World Championship with his Skunk Tank, which he hadn't brought in the previous 7 games before this. First time he introduces the Skunk Tank, and it ends up securing the victory for Vroom Vroom Pow. And in such a relatively dominant performance for him, there's really nothing you can do except tip your cap and wish congratulations to the man who played the best on this day. And in this day, on Saturday, October, what would it have been, 24, 23, 22nd, on Saturday, October 22nd, he was the better battler, and he just severely outplayed me en route to winning the Silph World Championship. So nothing you can do but tip your cap. And honestly, the fact obviously to get so close to get number 2 and lose is going to sting, is tough. But it makes it a little bit easier to accept when it wasn't like, oh, if I did this one thing, I could have won. It was like a dozen things. It was like a dozen things where he made catches or lead calls or threw at certain times or bait, not bait. So, like, it was like a dozen things that I could have done differently. It wasn't like, oh, if I had just done this one thing. It was a very convincing victory for him, and he deserved it very much so. But overall, I mean, we had some fun moments. We had some nice plays and nice catches of our own. And this is a game, right, where I'm a super competitive guy. Whether it was like basketball growing up or anything, like you tend to... For people like me, not everyone I think is built the same, but for really competitive people like me, you tend to have a bad habit of dwelling on the losses a lot more than enjoying and reflecting on the wins. I think that's what like Kobe Bryant used to say, like he hates losing way more than he enjoys winning. So I think it's important to also like be proud and have fun with what you did accomplish. And for me to be global rank number 2 this Silph season and end up being the runner-up in the postseason is still something to be proud of, even though it sucks to not win. But once again, nothing but respect for Vroom Vroom Pow. And he beat me 3 consecutive times, right? He beat me in the prelims and then twice in the World Championship. So respect to him, man, and putting India on the map as a very talented PvP country and region. So awesome stuff, dude. It was a whole lot of fun as well participating in this draft. It was a little bit stressful, to be honest, because we're all in different time zones, right? So like while Inner Bloom is like sleeping, we're like waiting for him to pick and stuff like that. But the draft was a whole ton of fun. I actually wanted to pick Steelix as my first pick, but Jay's fan picked it first. And then I wanted to pick Tapu Fini as my second pick, but Maxie picked it 1 pick before me. So lots of those type of things happen, and you just kind of have to roll with the punches. And it was overall a great experience, and everybody was very fun and respectful and cracking jokes in the Silph top 8. So it was a fun experience, man, and I'm proud to be part of it. So all that said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like, subscribe if you are new, comment down below. All comments help the algorithm. And all that said, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.